love getting the question, what is OT? Outnumbered overtime. OT, baby. To which I said it's a medical procedure, and Colonel Waltz looked a little concerned. No, it's our no-holes-barred chat online with, you know, about 12,000 of our favorite people online. And
that lives on forever.
Yeah, and many thousands more watching without chatting on the chat by Facebook Live right now. So welcome to them, welcome to you. You were talking a little bit, well, we spent some time talking about where we are with healthcare in this country. And do you think we're going forward?
We have to go forward. Obamacare is coming unraveled. It's blowing up the budget. It's blowing up the defense budget. We haven't even gotten into entitlement reform, and that's the non-discretionary spending between Medicaid, Social Security. So there is no choice here. It's just how.
You know what I realized we forgot to ask you today is, because we covered it in the show yesterday, but I'd be interested in your take.
Sure.
The possibility of a military parade that the president is talking about. What do you think about that? He's been floating that around for a while, but he brought it up again that he would really like to see that.
A la France. I don't think, I don't have an issue with it. I think as long as it's couched in the right way and in the right context.
Like what? What would that have to look like?
Well, I think it would have to look like that we are appreciating our current service members, we're appreciating our veterans, and we're showing the capability of the United States. I think the president politically risks walking right into what critics are already saying is, this is a guy that's in love with authoritarian regimes. Is this an autocrat in the making? And is the military part and parcel to that? So I think my advice would be careful with it. The United States doesn't have a history with it because of the civilian oversight of the military.
Well, we had it like George H.W. Bush did something similar, as I recall, in the 1990s. But it was more about like an appreciation day, that sort of thing.
It was, and of course there was the
bases. We did it for our returning dads and whatnot.
I think he wants like missiles on launchers, right? Rolling through tanks, right? I mean, that's what they do.
That's right, and that's what they actually do all over the world. Also from a military standpoint, it's also a great intelligence gathering tool.
Exactly. We use it with North Korea.
That's right.
Yeah.
We watch the Chinese parades, the Russian parades, the North Korean parades very closely.
So then what's Marie Harf's take on that?
I agree with the Colonel on this. I think that we already have parades that honor veterans and service members. You go to them every year. We go to them every year. I don't love the idea of tanks and missile launchers rolling through the streets of Washington, D.C. Exactly why you said. And I think there's ways to show that we have the strongest military in the history of the world without
dropping the mother of all bomb in Afghanistan.
Do you think that the morale, though, is such that maybe they could use, a demonstration of our appreciation
I can tell you that morale in the military took 180 degrees, sorry, Marie, from the last administration to this one, particularly at the senior ranks where the military and the Pentagon, and particularly the ones deployed in the field, were given the authorities to do their job. That was pulled back under the Obama administration. That's been pushed back out by President Trump. The mother of all bombs in Afghanistan was actually authorized by the commander in the field, rightly so. So I think actually morale is in a pretty good place, with the exception of some of our special forces and our Navy SEALs, where I come from, particularly because they are I have colleagues and former soldiers that are on their 13th, 14th, 15th tour. I mean, they're just worn out.
Colonel, correct me if I'm wrong, but President Trump's empowering of those on the ground, or military leaders on the ground, has been credited with us being able to make gains against ISIS and empowering them, correct? Oh,
absolutely. You had pilots coming back with plane loads of bombs because they were having a Mother May I all the way up the chain because of and Marie, we always take this into account.
I have a question.
Civilian casualties.
That's what I was going to ask you about.
And we listen, no one out on the ground wants to cause a civilian casualty, and everybody out on the ground understands the ramifications. But what was so ironic with the over concern and the micromanagement of civilian casualties with ISIS is that by letting them go out of a fear of civilian casualties, we basically guaranteed that ISIS was going to go on and kill more civilians.
And doesn't it also put our military men and women actually in danger if we are sort of hamstringing them with all these different protocols that they have to follow and not, I guess, giving them more freedom?
Some protocols are there for good reason.
Some are there for good reason, and it's just a matter of where those levels and those decisions are made. But if you make them too high, yes, absolutely. And I would argue and actually experienced under the Obama administration that when you have to ask up 4 chains of command, when you're actually under fire, you're putting soldiers' life in danger.
Wow. So Marie, can we talk about your interesting meeting in the makeup room this morning?
Yes, I would love to. I finally got to meet Heather Nauert, who is State Department spokesperson.
Your former job.
Right. So we kind of switched roles a little bit now that I'm here and she's there.
Tag team.
And I hadn't had a chance to meet her, although I've been watching her from afar, and I think she's been doing a great job of trying to make sense of a very complicated world and a changing policy that changed pretty radically from where we were.
That's a huge transition she made.
It's a huge transition. It was so nice, and she's obviously here for the UN. And I said, I remember last year I was I was in your position or a similar one, and it's a really tough week. It's a really tough job, and it was great to finally meet her.
It's a tough week for everybody. Let me talk to you about traffic in New York City right now.
Yes, I know. I finally realized why everyone hates when we came to town for the UN.
My God. I have tremendous respect for all of for the Pentagon spokespeople, for the State Department spokespeople, for all of them, because they have to be. You had to be abreast of just such a breadth of issues, from the Rohingya crisis to climate change to what's going on. Yeah, hence the big binder. We were talking about how she's been criticized for having her binder up there.
Yeah,
I think she should have 3 binders up there. You want her to have the latest and greatest information.
It is a really tough job.
That happened during our air, and I'm looking both at Facebook Live and the live chat now. So if you guys want to comment on it, I'll read some of your comments. We saw the First Lady make history on her own today. She stood up at the United Nations and gave a speech. I'd just like to maybe talk a little bit about that. I mean, it was about protecting children around the world. And Sandra, you've said that when you've heard her talk about these subjects, it's just she's so engaging and engaged
and authentic and genuine. And I think some of her strongest moments have been when she's able to talk about this cause and when she went into a hospital and visited 6 children. I think this I hope we see more of her, to be honest with you. But what a special
I loved her focus on education. We've often talked about the wars in Afghanistan, the wars in Iraq, this war on terror, which are all fine. Those are kind of near-term battlefields. But for me, it's how do we undermine the ideology of Islamic extremism? And in my mind, it's education, education, and education. I love the quote from Malala Yousafzai, the Pakistani girl who was shot in the face by the Taliban for going to school. And she said the thing extremists most fear is a girl with a book.
Wow.
And so I think
what a strong statement, too.
Isn't it? Yeah. It's incredibly powerful. And I think, if you think about it, it's so obvious where women are empowered, where girls are educated, where women are thriving in civil society, extremism doesn't. It's really that simple. And so I was thrilled to see the First Lady at the UN today focusing on education worldwide. It's critical.
So, Marie, it was interesting because you were just talking about how Heather Nauert has stepped into your shoes. I'm curious, when you have been part of these things at the UN, how did Melania Trump do compared with what you've seen? I mean, she seemed, as Sandra said, heartfelt. This is a subject she knows well.
Yeah. Well, it's a subject, as the Colonel just said, that doesn't always get as much attention. That's one of the beauties of the UN General Assembly. Yes, the world leaders give these speeches and we all pay a lot of attention to them. There are thousands of other meetings and speeches and events that go on everything from poverty to education to ending child trafficking to getting rid of landmines. All these things that aren't sexy headline grabbers, but are so important for our cultures and our countries. And to have the First Lady focused on one like that, I mean, is a really important part of American leadership in the world.
Absolutely.
And it's just an extraordinary week to be.
And it's an important part of soft power. Right?
Absolutely.
Oh, that's an interesting way of putting it.
That's right.
Hey, I want to get this in from the live chat. Marlon F. says he thinks the Nancy Pelosi DACA thing was staged. How did they let that many people get so close to her? So that's an interesting point.
That's a little conspiracy theory.
But in the wake of the shootings with Kevin McCarthy,
she clearly walked off stage, so she was not going to stand there any longer.
And I will say, someone who's worked on Capitol Hill, who's worked on campaigns, I mean, you have people that go in that stage these events that are supposed to ensure that stuff like that doesn't happen. Yeah, you have people that go in, do the events. Yeah, so they clearly messed up, left her in a vulnerable state, which ultimately, led to some embarrassing.
So you don't think it was staged?
No, I don't think it was staged. But you had touched on anti-child sex trafficking that was actually an issue that I've worked on in the past. I've worked on anti-child sex trafficking issues or legislation in Congress with bipartisan work. I think it was Senator Cornyn as well as Klobuchar. But what is really sad is when you actually look at the issue, it's profound. It is a big problem here in the United States.
That's right.
And it is something you would never
work together.
Well, one thing is for sure, if First Lady Melania Trump is going to draw some attention to it, it will get that.
Yes, which hopefully,
All right, we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.